You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there everyone, and welcome to episode number 117 of the Just Japan podcast. My name is Kevin O'Shea. I am the host of the Just Japan podcast, a weekly podcast that brings you a lot of cool stuff about Japan. That's right, each and every week I bring to you a different guest to talk about different topics about Japan. Living in Japan, working in Japan, games, hobbies, sports, professions, food, education, you name it. We try to cover all the bases, and 117 episodes in, we're doing the same thing. We're continuing the tradition of sharing all kinds of cool Japan stuff with each and every one of you out there. So I am a Canadian who lives and works right here in Kobe, Japan. And from the Just Japan podcast studios, I reach out to different people across the country and share their experiences and stories with you. And this week we've got yet another amazing episode. I'm going to be speaking to Trevor, who is the man behind the HanshinTigers.com. The Hanshin Tigers, one of the biggest, most famous, most popular baseball clubs, professional baseball clubs here in Japan, based out of the Kansai region, actually out of Koshien, which is right smack dab in between Kobe and Osaka, Japan. So he runs the most elaborate, information-filled, amazing website in English about the Hanshin Tigers. The HanshinTigers.com is the one-stop place to go for all things English Hanshin Tigers. You can read all about the players, you can read about the games, you can read blog posts, updates. There's a podcast, a weekly podcast all about, especially during the actual season, the baseball season, about all things Hanshin Tigers. So go check that out. Of course, the link will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. All right, of course, lots of things have happened since last week's episode. Last week's episode dropped. That was called Pokemon No in Japan, because at that point, Pokemon Go had not dropped in Japan. And last Friday, mid-morning, Pokemon Go dropped in Japan. It's been a big deal. It's a huge thing here, guys. Pokemon Go. So I'm recording this episode on the 25th of July. It will be uploaded on the 26th. And at the moment, I'm a level 10. And I'm on Team Valor, guys. Sorry if that offends any of you. But you know what? I've got coworkers who have had it since I have, and they're way higher than I am, like level 16, 17, which basically means that that's all they did on the weekend. And that's cool for them. Awesome. I just simply can't do that because I have other obligations. And what are those other obligations? Well, family being one. And as a Kobe PR ambassador, public relations ambassador, which you guys who follow me know I am. So I help promote the city of Kobe, Japan on social media to try to attract more English-speaking visitors to come to Kobe and hang out and travel and stay and eat food and spend money and all of that stuff. I had a special event yesterday on the 24th, on the Sunday. I got a behind-the-scenes tour of Suma Aqualife Park, formerly known as Suma Aquarium, and it was incredible. It was amazing. It was so fun. I took a lot of cool pictures, got a lot of great video. So stay tuned to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/busankevin. There will be a cool video of that coming up probably next week. I've got another video that's I'm trying to get out at least trying to get out a video a week on Busan Kevin. With my schedule, that's about the best I can do. So I'm hoping this week to get a video out about the buy local organic farmers market, the Eat Local Kobe farmers market, which I love so much. And next week, there will be a great video about the Suma Aqualife Park, which is so cool. But, well, it's really cool. I got a chance to meet the director of the park, and I asked him about like foreigners volunteering, and he's like, "When can you start?" I was like, "What? Holy cow!" Like, when like can I actually like volunteer and learn about like the animals and the fish and the turtles and touch them and take care of them and actually learn about them? And he was like, "Absolutely, we would love to have you join our team." I sadly at the moment don't have time in my life. My schedule is so tight. But, that's the kind of thing I'm hoping to get into in the future, volunteering at a place like an aquarium or like a bird sanctuary, a bird rehab sanctuary, ideally, where, I can help nurse, injured birds back to health, or do bird banding, not banning. We don't want to ban birds, except pigeons sometimes, or bird banding, that kind of awesomeness. Citizen science, folks. So that was really cool. I got to do that. Okay, so that being said, I did interview Mr. Andrew Higgins again last night about Pokemon Go, because it is a Go in Japan. So this is going to be a double dropper week. I'm so freaking busy. So the goal is tomorrow is Tuesday the 26th. Hopefully this episode will drop on the 26th. On the 27th, I'm going to be interviewing Brett Larner of Japan Running Times, of the Japan Running News. He is amazing. That man, he works with a lot of professional Olympic type athletes, Japanese athletes. He knows so much about running. He was interviewed in the early days of the podcast. He's coming back on again, and we're going to talk about the Japanese team, Japanese running in Japan, Japanese runners leading up to the Rio Olympics. And he's going to give us kind of an analysis on the Rio Games, which is going to be awesome. So that will be an interview on the Wednesday, the 27th. And on the 28th, the next night, I'm hoping episode number 117 will drop. 118. So 2 episodes in 1 week, and that will be all about the Pokemon Go. I talked to Andrew again now that the game is live, and we've both been playing it, and we chat about it, so I think you guys will like it. So of course you can find the Just Japan podcast on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher Internet Radio, on the Google Play Store, on Libsyn. We're all over the place, folks, and all of those links will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. I was sporting the t-shirt this week for the Just Japan podcast. I was wearing from the Teespring campaign. I got my own shirt, and I was on my Kobe PR Ambassadors tour. I was wearing the Just Japan podcast t-shirt and very proudly wearing it. Someone actually came up and recognized it. Yeah, oh my goodness. Someone came up to me and said, Just Japan podcast. Are you Kevin? And I was like, yeah, I am. And they're like, I listen to your podcast. And I was like, holy cow. And we all like screamed and high-fived each other and squealed like teenagers. But I'm not joking. That really happened. And I was really excited that someone walked up and recognized the logo on my t-shirt. And we're like, that's Just Japan podcast. Ah! Very cool. Very exciting. So I'm thinking that over my summer holiday in August, I may try to open up a little bit of an online shop where you guys can get Just Japan podcast stickers, t-shirts, coffee mugs, that kind of thing. That's a project for my summer holiday. Not right now while I'm working and up to my eyeballs in life stuff. Also, of course, the Just Japan podcast Patreon campaign has been revitalized and renewed. There are a ton of incentives. We're talking free podcasts, bonus podcasts for patrons, mentions, all kinds of cool stuff. And I want to start off right now by thanking Michael King. Thank you so much, Michael, for supporting the Just Japan podcast. People like you, awesome people like you, are going to make this podcast better and better. And you stay tuned. Coming down your way in the near future will be a bonus. I'm adding letters to things. A bonus Just Japan podcast that is only for patrons. It's going to be cool. It's going to be interesting, and you will enjoy it. And other things as well. So Michael King, thank you so much for supporting the Just Japan podcast. We really appreciate it. And there will be a thanks in the show notes for you as well when you go to justjapanstuff.com. I'll be mentioning you. Thank you so much, Michael. Awesome. Okay, all right, so let's just jump into this week's interview with Trevor of the HanshinTigers.com. We're going to talk about the most crazy, awesome baseball team in Japan, the most intense fans in Japan, and the most exhaustive English resource about this team here in Japan. So sit back and listen to my interview with Trevor from the HanshinTigers.com. All right, guys, welcome to episode number 117 of the Just Japan podcast. And this week we're going to be talking all about the Hanshin Tigers. And we've got a special guest, first-time guest, Trevor Reichura.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me on the show, Kev. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to talk with you guys today.
Cool. And you know what? Ladies and gentlemen out there listening to the Just Japan podcast, I live in Kobe, which is in the Kansai area of Japan. And if you spend any amount of time in the Kansai area, you're going to know who the heck the Hanshin Tigers are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it's game day and you got to get a train somewhere.
Yeah, there's no avoiding it.
You're going to see some interesting outfits and ensembles around. But before we get into talking about the Hanshin Tigers and all the cool stuff that you're doing here in Japan with regards to that, first, could you maybe tell the Just Japan podcast listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and where you live in Japan and what you do?
Will do. Okay. Well, as Kev said, my name is Trevor Reichura, and I'm kind of known as T-Ray in my little corner of the interweb. I mean, that's kind of the name I go by, the T from Trevor and the Ray from Reichura, T-Ray. I know, really clever. So I'm from Canada, much like Kevin, and yeah, go Canucks. And I'm actually from rural Manitoba. I'm from just outside of Winterpeg. Mm-hmm. I've been in Japan since 1998, and that includes 11 years in Okinawa, 1 year in Hokkaido. And
oh wow!
You've
been here for quite some time.
I have. And I've spent the last 5 in the Kansai area. I was in the eastern part of Kobe for about a year, and I'm in a city called Ashia right now.
Oh, okay, great, cool. So you're very close to where the Hanshin Tigers action is.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm 5 stops on the Hanshin Railway from the stadium.
Wow, yeah, Koshihan. So I mean, wow, you've been in Japan since 1998.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone today about how long in the tooth I am with Asia. So I've been in Asia since 2002.
You're in Korea for?
I was in Korea for 5.5 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, before I came to Japan. There was a brief stop in Canada in between, but it was less than a year. So I just basically say, yeah, I've been in Asia for 14 years or 15 years, Okay. I mean, the reason why I asked you to come on the podcast this evening is because, I mean, you yourself are a podcaster.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's always awesome to meet other English language podcasters in Japan. There's actually not that many.
Really?
Well,
I'm not even aware, but I listen.
Well, okay, maybe there are, but I'm only aware of some.
Right.
There's, I think podcasts are things that kind of come and go very quickly.
Uh-huh.
Much like YouTube channels. People are like, "Hey, I'm here in Japan. I'm going to start a podcast," and they do a few episodes, and that's it.
There's so much so much of that on the internet, right? Like with YouTube channels that have just been abandoned, they're still sitting there, 6-7 years old and not updated and stuff like that, right?
Or you meet people. You meet people who are like, my years of being a YouTuber. People are like, they're in America, they're in Canada, they're so stoked, they're gonna come to Japan, they're gonna work in Japan, and about a year before they start making these like daily videos about how excited they are to come to Japan, and then they're like, I'm gonna make like videos every day when I'm in Japan, I'm gonna show you everything, and they get to Japan and they make like 2 or 3 videos, and then you never hear from them again.
I guess
kind of the common tale.
That's the nature of how things go, right? I mean, people always start things with good intentions, and it doesn't always end up where they hope it's going to be, right?
Oh, exactly. I mean, well, to be honest, and I tell a lot of people, this is my second kick at the can of podcasting. My first attempt was in 2008, and I started a podcast called Looks Like Canada, and it was going to be like a Canadian history podcast. And it was going to be like 10-minute episodes where I'd choose like a historical moment, I'd research it, I'd write it out, I'd make a script. And then I'd do it. I'd read the script of this historical moment in Canada, and I made 8 episodes, and had it online. And that was it.
Can we still find them?
No, long gone.
Oh,
I think I just recently found them on a hard drive somewhere.
Nice.
So they may at some point in life pop up somewhere.
You might have to put a few clips into your current podcast. I think that'd be
Yeah,
pretty fun.
true. I've actually taken some like story clips from old YouTube videos recently and popped them in to a few podcasts, for fun audio sake. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. So you run a baseball podcast.
Yes.
So and you run a really awesome baseball website, which we're going to
Thanks.
get into, and I'd like to hear more about it,
Sure.
shortly. But I'm curious. I mean, it's clear from your podcast, from your site, you're a man who loves baseball, and that's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm not a fan of a team right now. I'm not following, but I grew up to my eyeballs in baseball, so I've got a warm spot for it for sure. But
Hmm.
can you tell us a little bit about your baseball history? So did you play ball as a kid? Where did this love come from?
Yeah, sure. So I played ball as a kid, just like most kids do, but I was never really good at it, or at least like when it was slow pitch or whatever, like on the school ground, I was pretty good. But when I had to be in any competitions, I was below average for sure, and I never got a lot of playing time. I never got a lot of love from my teammates, and so more often than not, I would spend time on the bench. And typical me, this is something that I did so much in my childhood. I quit. I played 2 3 years and I quit. I played hockey for 2 or 3 years and I quit. Same thing with soccer, basketball, you name it. I loved playing sports, but I was just never really good enough to stick anything out.
Mm.
Um, so it's not that I have a particular affinity for baseball, or at least I didn't until I started following the Tigers. But I would say the biggest precursor for me was that. So based on my name, you may or may not know this, but I'm actually part Indian, and by that I mean East Indian, India.
Okay.
That's my family background, and so one of the stereotypes is, oh yeah, Indians are good at numbers or they're good at math or whatever, and I've definitely got a thing for numbers.
Okay.
So when I was a little kid, I constantly read the sports pages. I mean, I'm talking like before I could read, I was reading the sports pages.
Mm.
I was looking at the numbers. I knew the stats. I knew my multiples of 7 because of football, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I really wanted to be a sports journalist, actually.
Oh wow. Okay.
That was my dream. And when I was little, I used to do play-by-play. Just imagine all in my head. I would just like imagine a hockey game in my head, and I do play-by-play with a friend of mine. We'd record it and stuff like that. And I actually went to journalism school in Ottawa at Carleton University.
Oh,
And,
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
I
and
went. I went to the University of Ottawa for teaching.
oh, excellent. So same city, great.
Yeah.
So, but just like my childhood sports career, I soon gave up on journalism when I saw how competitive it was and how cutthroat it was. And
Okay.
it just wasn't my style, and so I ended up switching over to teaching.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyways, my interest in baseball was really fueled by numbers. Baseball is a really stats-driven sport, at least
Oh
for
yeah.
followers.
Absolutely.
And I got into fantasy sports pretty much straight out of college, and I played it every year, and I was really good at it, and I loved it. And so I followed MLB big time, but that was it. I never actually followed Japanese baseball for a long time.
Hmm. Okay. So, um, you know, it's pre-Japan days for you. You're a graduate from journalism school. I'm just curious what I mean, and everyone has always a different story, a very interesting story.
Mhm.
It may be sometimes just kind of a regular standard story, but how the heck did you end up in Japan?
All right. Well, just a quick correction. I didn't graduate from journalism school. I'm a journalism school dropout, and
Oh, okay.
and I graduated with a Bachelor of Education. But
Oh, okay. So you spent some time in journalism and then you switched over to education.
that's right. Yeah.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
And so that actually ties in with how I got to Japan, because as I was graduating from university, the baby boomer population was still in the workforce, and they were holding on to their jobs.
Hey, wait a second. They were supposed to retire and let all of us young Ontario teachers get jobs.
That's what they were supposed to do for us
Wait a
Manitobans
second.
as
That's
well.
why I got a degree. That's why I became an Ontario teacher, because apparently all these baby boomers were going to retire and we
Yeah.
would all have jobs.
It was a myth.
Oh, wait.
It was a
Yeah,
lie.
that's right. Yeah. Oh, wait. I'm in Japan, too. And I'm also an
Exactly.
Ontario teacher. Okay.
There you go. So actually, I was told by one of my university professors that if I wanted to be hired when the jobs magically opened up, which I don't know if it ever happened.
No, it still hasn't happened. We're still waiting for those baby boomers to retire
Wow.
as they approach their 70s.
the clock is ticking, and they're just
What's
yeah.
going on?
They keep
Come on,
ticking through.
guys.
Anyways, so he said, go overseas, get some teaching experience. You'll be a lot more hireable if you have experience as opposed to if you kind of sit around and fester and rot, in a library or in a fast food joint in Canada. So I did just that. I started to look around. I was thinking, well, where could I go that would give me a little bit of a financial boost straight out of college? And yet at the same time, I wanted to do something different. Like I didn't want to just go to Europe or someplace that kind of had similar culture to Canada, I guess. I was like, well, if I'm going to go overseas, I may as well go someplace that's very different and very adventurous and stuff like that. And so, I'd heard about the JET program from my friend's older sister. She had a great experience in Japan. And so I applied for that. I didn't get the job, but I was put on the waiting list. And 6 days of being on the waiting list later, I got a phone call and they said, how would you like to go to Okinawa? And I
Okay,
said,
so you were
sure,
a
where's
Jet.
that?
Cool,
Yeah, I was
cool.
a Jet. Hmm.
Ah, so you end up in Okinawa.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Woe is me, right?
Well, no. Just I mean, that's that's you talk about going to Japan,
Uh-huh.
and Okinawa is a very different experience, I think, than the rest of Japan.
Oh, absolutely.
We've had
Yeah.
we've had a few guests on in the past who have lived in Okinawa. We've had Kitty Does Japan. She used to be called Oki Ninja Kitty on YouTube, and my friend Reynolds Air, who was a YouTuber based in Kyoto for many years, and now he's in Okinawa. So it seems
Okay.
like a very different world
Oh, for sure.
in
Yeah.
some respects. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I wasn't even on main island Okinawa. I was on a small island off of the main island.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, so it was a pretty isolated experience, but I mean, it helped me to fall in love with Japan, or at least the Japan that I knew, which was very small. But yeah, absolutely loved it. I was not super excited about Japan coming in, but once I got here, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm still here, so I like something about it, right?
Cool. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, my plan was to come here for 2 years, and that was 8 years ago.
Mm.
Things happen. Okay, so you're in Japan.
Uh-huh.
You're living in Okinawa. How did the Tigers thing happen?
While I was in Okinawa, it was hard to follow baseball, particularly Japanese baseball, because there are no teams down there, and
Yeah.
the broadcasting was limited as well. So I had to choose the Yomiuri Giants or nobody.
Yeah.
And the Giants are kind of like, for those of you that don't know Japanese baseball, they're like the New York Yankees of Japan. And I just definitely have that special place in my heart for the Yankees, as in no place in my heart for the Yankees.
Man,
And so,
you're totally like me. You're totally
yeah,
like me. I've always felt that way about like MLB with like the Yankees, and even though I'm still not someone who really follows Japanese baseball, I'm just like, yeah, I just can't see myself ever getting behind the Giants.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
just something about them. Like it's that big money organization.
For sure, for sure. I mean, they are Japan's team, and there's no disputing, how much coverage they get, how much success they've had, all that kind of stuff. But I just could not see myself liking them. So I continued to follow MLB while I was in Okinawa because, I had a lot of American friends down there too that were in the military or whatever, that kind of stuff. So it was easy to have good conversations with them about Major League Baseball. But then when I moved to Kansai, those conversations never happened. There weren't as many Major League fans. There were a lot of Hanshin Tiger fans. And I realized, like, if I want to talk baseball with people, I better get to know the Japanese game. I better get to know this local team. And so I just started to, do research and stuff like that. And I noticed that there was almost nothing on the internet in English about the team.
Okay.
Or at least there was no, like, recent following. I mean, you can go to Wiki and find articles there, right? But that was about it.
Yeah. Okay. So now, you made your way to the Kansai. You kind of discover that people here aren't so into MLB, and that's very true. I mean, from my own discussions with people, I mean, I grew up a big MLB fan. I mean, I'm a Canuck, but I grew up. I don't know. I had what do they call it? Field of Dreams.
Dreams.
I had those dreams too, kind of thing. Like I grew up in a very small town in eastern Canada, in Nova Scotia, and we had our little league. We had 4 teams in our town, and I played little league, and I played bantam, and I was a pitcher in my late elementary school age and junior high, and I had dreams of being a pro pitcher, and I worshipped Nolan Ryan, and I collected Nolan Ryan baseball cards. Like I was fanatical about it, and I loved I loved guys like Cal Ripken Jr. and Roger Clemens pre-steroid days. I loved guys like Kirby Puckett and Darryl Strawberry, and like that's kind of like my wheelhouse, my era.
That's my era too, man.
Yeah,
I know all those names. Yeah, nice.
And I collected baseball cards, Top Deck and Fleer and all the jazz, and I used to read the backs of those cards like it was no one's business, and memorize stats. And then I realized at one point that I had to work really, really hard just to be kind of okay.
Yeah.
To be like I was I think a little bit above average, but not much, and I had to work really, 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 really hard to be slightly above average.
People don't realize how hard a sport baseball is.
Yeah, I mean, I remember pitching.
Really
like I would have like a bucket of balls, and I had like the kind of bounce back net, and I would just like pitch as much as I could, like every day until my arm would almost fall off. And but I loved that. I love ball. But I'm digressing now. Back to you arriving in the Kansai. So you're in the Kansai, and I'm going to assume that you notice fairly quickly that the Hanshin Tigers fans are a unique breed of people.
Yes.
And so here in Japan, that I know, I mean, I don't know much, but I see it when I'm out and you hear it. But Hanshin Tigers fans are really renowned in Japan for their passion, their unique, centered, focused passion on baseball and their team. So could you tell us a little bit about kind of Hanshin Tigers fandom?
I don't even know where to start or where to finish on that one, because there's so many ways to attack that one. But one of the things that you were mentioning, just when you hop on the train and stuff, you see all sorts of different costumes, people decked out in all sorts of stuff. I mean, there is so much Hanshin Tigers merchandise out there, and people gobble it up, like it's candy. And so when you become a fan, it's almost like you've caught like a fever or a disease or something, and you just can't shake it. And just a little aside here, the team is having a pretty rough year this year, but I still can't stop watching the games. I mean, I still turn the TV on every night and I watch every game, and it's not only because I'm covering them. So there's something about that team that is just lovable, and I think part of it is that their story and their success or their lack of success, and yet the promise that they show and the passion that they have as a team too, it's a real reflection of the Osaka and the Kansai area. I mean, the people here are very passionate people. I'm sure you've noticed that as well.
Absolutely.
And so when they get into something, they really get into it. So the fans, where do I go with this? First of all, I think every Japanese team has their own kind of cheering section that they call the Oendan. But the Tigers one, I just think, is a lot bigger than all the other ones. And I mean, they have these Oendan, these cheering sections in every stadium that you go to across the nation. No matter what stadium the Tigers are playing at, actually the Tigers fans are louder than the home team more often than not. They
even when they're the visitors, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty crazy. It's amazing. I can't imagine what it's like to play on the team and constantly have that kind of fan support. But so just a little primer, I guess, for people that don't know Japanese baseball very well. Every team has got a team song, and all of the main players also have like their own kind of cheer song or like a cheer. And so it's kind of unique to their personality or their hitting style or whatever it might be. And so, the fans here, I mean, they know all the songs and they sing them out like crazy. And another little aside here, my son, who's 2 years old, he knows them all too. A little bit of father influence there. Yeah, where else do I go?
Which I noticed. I was on the hanshintigers.com tonight looking, and you've got all the songs listed.
Yep.
You got them all there.
I put them up so that people that can't read Japanese have a chance to actually, read them in Romanized letters. So yeah.
Wow.
Want to make sure that they're ready when they go to the game to have the experience of a lifetime too, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So even just one more thing about the fans,
Absolutely, yeah.
um,
Go ahead.
whether the team is winning or losing, fans typically will stay right till the end, and they'll cheer right to the end. They'll sing these player songs right until until the final out of the ninth inning. Case in point, yesterday the team lost 6-2, and they just kept cheering right through to the end. So
Wow, really, just a diehard legion of fans.
absolutely, yeah.
I'm curious about something. I've heard about this, and maybe the people out there would be interested in hearing about this.
Mhm.
Can you tell us the relationship between the Hanshin Tigers and Colonel Saunders?
Yeah. This is a fun one actually, and this relates to the fans and their craziness, and I could have gone here as well, and we'll go here right now. So the Hanshin Tigers have been around for 81 years now, and they have only won one championship, like the All Japan Championship.
Really?
Just
Only
one.
once?
Yes. Yes. It's a 12-team league, or 12 teams in pro baseball, and they've won 1 out of 81. So obviously, there's a bit of a success issue there. So that was in 1985. It was a magical year. I wasn't here yet. You weren't here yet. But if you talk to anybody in Kansai, they'll be able to tell you about the Hanshin Tigers 1985, and they can list off the players. Well, anyways, when the team won the All Japan Championship, the Nippon Series, fans just went nuts, and they started to pour out into the streets, and a lot of fans gathered around the Dotonbori Canal, which is in kind of downtown Osaka. Keep in mind, this is a pretty filthy, polluted canal, especially in 1985. It still hadn't been cleaned up. But what fans were jumping in there just out of sheer excitement and glee, and they were singing all the players' cheer songs and stuff. And anytime that they sang a player's song, they'd look in the crowd, or somebody in the crowd that looked like that player would jump into the canal. So it was like, if it was Kakefu, they'd find someone that looked like Kakefu, and then he would jump into the canal and get himself all full of pollutants and stuff, and then climb his way out or whatever. But so they got to the foreign player on the team, whose name was Randy Bass. Great guy, by the way. And there were no foreigners in this crowd, I guess. And so they had nobody that looked like Randy Bass to jump into the canal. And so some of the, more drunken fans or whatever looked around and got the crazy idea to throw Colonel Sanders' statue, which was outside of the KFC right near the canal. They threw that into the canal. And that was the Randy Bass. Well, the statue sank, and it was said to be the curse of the colonel, that I guess it was such a horrible thing for them to do, and that until the colonel was rescued out of the canal, the team would never win another championship.
And
So
that
now,
was, so that was in 1985.
yes,
So fast forward a few
Yeah.
years, someone's been found, right?
yeah, quite a few years, but it was found. I don't remember the exact year, 2009 maybe, something like that. It was found, but it actually was missing, I think, a hand and a couple of digits on the other hand or something like that. And so they're saying the curse still continues because the full body has not been found. But the statue is now, it's somewhere, it's on display somewhere to show. And so it's a very, it's not the shiny, polished white Colonel Sanders. He's definitely, a victim of pollution himself. And he rose. Yeah.
That's an environmental lesson to everybody.
Yes.
And a lesson in controlling yourself when you're really hammered and your team wins. Don't start ripping up private property and chucking it into a river.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, so I love the Colonel stories. That is a legendary thing here in the Kansai.
And so now, actually, 2 years ago, the team made it back to the Nippon Series. But when they did, the KFCs around that area locked up their Colonel Sanderses. They put them inside the shop, and they made sure nobody could take any more of them out.
Oh,
So they're definitely wary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the HanshinTigers.com. So you've got a pretty exhaustive site. I mean, the HanshinTigers.com is really, it's an amazing one-stop English spot for news about the Hanshin Tigers. You've got book reviews, you've got cheer songs, you've got player profiles, you've got a podcast, standing schedules, you've got like premium content. You got a ton of stuff here.
I do.
You do, and it's really awesome. Can you tell us about your website, where it came from? And here, I'm just going to let you go on about this because there's a lot of stuff here. Talk about like the different things on the site and your podcast as well. I'd like to know where it all came from and how you kind of, in a nutshell, put it together.
Okay. Well, yeah, for sure. I started the website a couple of years ago, May of 2014. In fact, it kind of started right around the same time that I started following the team or getting interested in the team. As I'd said, I looked to try and find information about the current team, about scores, all that kind of stuff, and there was nothing in English. Well, I speak enough Japanese, I read enough Japanese to be able to translate, to be able to read the Japanese stuff and decipher it. But I thought to myself, this is a huge team, and I know that there's foreign fans. I mean, I see foreigners at every game that I go to. What do they do for information? Like, how do they keep up with the team? And, at the time, and I guess currently still, I'm not fully satisfied with my day job. And so I kind of needed something to keep my sanity, and that something was the HanshinTigers.com. So I started with just the profiles of the 4 foreign players on the team. And then once a week, I would put up like a maybe 200-word summary or 300-word summary of the team and the week that they had.
Yeah.
But slowly, as I got more into the team and as I started to kind of get more ideas, I just started to add more and more to the website. So like I said, I speak enough Japanese and read enough. And I read a really cool article, and I was like, man, there's so many fans out there that have no access to this, and it's unfair. It's unfair that English-speaking fans can't take their degree of fandom as far as they want.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And so that's kind of like my underlying goal, I guess you could say. Like, I'm not necessarily aiming to be the biggest fan, although I might be. But what I'm aiming to do is English-speaking fans of the Tigers to be able to take their level of passion as far as they want and not have language be a barrier. And so that's where I added in the cheer songs so that you can actually watch YouTube videos of the cheer songs and follow along with alphabetized or romanized lyrics. I put up player profiles for all the players that are currently on the team, or even the ones that were on the team last year and so on. I put up the schedule for the team so that if anyone wants to know what's coming up, when they're going to be at Koshien next, they can come to my site. The standings, so that you get a quick look at how the team has been doing. And then during the season, I'm not as diligent about this, but I put up translations of interesting articles or interviews that I see that I think that English-speaking fans would be interested in. I still tend to focus more on the foreign players than the Japanese players, and part of the reason for that is because I think a lot of the English-speaking NPB and Hanshin fans might recognize some of these names from, just for example, somebody that's maybe from Pittsburgh that followed the AAA team in Pennsylvania or something, and they know a certain player that came over to Hanshin and they really want to know how he's doing or whatever, stuff like that. And then even just for friends and family of these players that are stateside, right? I'm sure they're going, I wonder how my son did last night in the game or whatever, and they have no way of knowing, right? I mean, other than calling, but it's not that their son has all this time. So one of my other goals was I want to keep the families in the loop.
Okay, wow.
So kind of be like the bridge between the player and the family back home. And that's actually gone really well. I've actually had a lot of the family members contact me and say, thank you so much for covering. I can hear a lot more about my son now, or stuff like that. So it's been really cool.
So they have access to. Yeah, I have to make the reference, Mr. Baseball. I guess my first experience of seeing the concept of foreign players playing in Japan was Mr. Baseball. As silly as the movie was, but Tom Selleck coming to Japan.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. In that case, he was like in the the twilight years of his career in MLB, and he moved over to Japan to play, and everything was too small. It's interesting. I mean, you're forming these relationships with, like, say, foreign players and their families, and I noticed, like, you've had a lot of interviews with players.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, it's tough to.
How does that work out? Is that something that you're able to, like, kind of like you build this relationship with your site and connect with them, or you connect with them like after games or pre-games? How does that work?
Yeah, it's almost entirely through the website and through Twitter, through Facebook, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of how I do it.
Yeah. So I get to maybe about 10 games a season. And I actually don't see the players before or after the games. Like, I work full time. I'm a teacher, and then I'm also a father of a young kid. So I can't really, like.
I hear you, man.
be like a ballpark rat or anything like that. I can't be there all the time. But through Twitter, a lot of the players, especially the foreign players, are on Twitter. And then a lot of their spouses find me either on Twitter or on Facebook, whatever. And some of the players follow me via their spouses because they don't want to, make their social media presence super known in the Japanese,
I got you.
In the Japanese baseball world. But their wives are a little bit more anonymous. So I've made a lot of contact in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Cool. That's very interesting. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about doing what we do, being podcasters or blog creators or website creators. We get to meet a lot of interesting people and kind of showcase them in ways. Okay, so the site. It is. I got to admit, man, I'm really impressed. Like, for example, when I look at like the cheers. Like you've got like a Romaji. I mean, you've got a YouTube video. You've got like the Romaji section. You've got the Japanese, like the kanji and katakana, hiragana, and then you've got like an English translation.
Yeah,
you've clearly put some serious time into this.
Yes, like most of my waking hours outside of work and family.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I mean, I get that. I mean, I know with my own podcast and I'm not maybe I'm a bit more scattered than you are.
But you're a pretty ubiquitous presence yourself.
I've got like my birding nature like my ornithology entomology Facebook page with like my nature photography, and then I've got like my Japan podcast, and then I've got like YouTube channels. It's all kind of all over the place.
Well, and then on top of that, you're also doing geocaching, and you're putting up videos on that stuff too. And so
yeah. It's kind of when you have a moment, you do this and that. I'm I suppose I'm one of these people. My whole life, I can't
sit still.
I shouldn't say I can't sit still because I'm very good at sitting still, especially when I have a beer in my hand.
Right.
It's not like it's an ADHD thing. It's just I don't like. I love producing content.
Yeah,
I love creating, and I get a lot more fun out of creating than consuming. So I think I feel a lot more satisfied. Sometimes. Recently, since Netflix came about here, for my first time in like 15 years, I'm actually consuming content on a regular basis, and that's kind of nice. I think that's actually going to make me a little bit more creative. But at the same time, I would much rather make stuff and get out in the world and explore than
Absolutely.
And I mean, what you're doing is that exact same thing. I mean, you're creating content that's really useful for people, and that's a very cool thing, and I'm sure that you've got some people who are big fans of your stuff.
I think so. I like to think so. The thing about what I'm doing too, though, Kevin, is that most of what I do is it's all learning on the fly. I mean, like if you knew how little I knew about the Tigers 2 years ago versus how much I know now, you'd probably be pretty surprised. But most of it also, if you were following my website the whole time, you might not be surprised because most of what I learn put out. As you were saying, I've got book reviews on the website. And so, every time I get a chance to read a book, either written by a former Tigers player or written about the team or whatever, I'll read it and then I'll post a review. Hey, this is what I learned, everybody. Maybe you'd like to learn a little bit of what I've learned, stuff like that. And so just every time that I pick up something new, a new angle on the game or whatever, it gives me that chance to share it with everybody else. And so for myself, like I've got the Twitter, I've got Facebook, I've got the website, and then I've got the podcast, and they're kind of four separate, they're all centered around the same thing. And yet they all kind of take on different roles. And I think with the podcast, it gives me a chance to put out a lot more information than I can put out in an article or that I can put out.
Yeah.
And so I've really enjoyed podcasting, and it's something that actually you've asked me like 2 times already, and I've kind of not answered your question about the podcast. But I've really enjoyed it. It's just been so much fun. I mean, it does take a lot of work, a lot more work than I thought, but it's just so much fun. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is something that okay, I started, well, I mean, gosh, actually, I started as a blogger back in the 90s. 97 possibly was my first blog I had. So I've been like kind of air quotes old school.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty old.
In 2006, in the kind of not infancy of YouTube, but not far from that, the toddlerhood of it. I started my YouTube channel and I started video blogging. And then I was a video blogger for I mean, I still am, but I was a dedicated video blogger for many years.
Right.
And I thought, oh man, I do all this stuff. I know I'm good with the computers and cameras and stuff, and I'm very confident speaking, in front of others and in front of a camera. This podcasting jazz would be easy. It's a completely different beast.
Yeah,
and I've seen so many YouTubers who are like making videos like, yeah, I should start a podcast. It looks pretty easy. I'm just thinking, man, it ain't nothing easy about being a podcaster. If you care about what you do. I put like way more work into this than I did when I was really into my. No, don't get me wrong. I'm sure I know there are YouTubers out there who are like incredible video editors and cinematographers who do incredible things, but it's just, I've seen people who are like, podcasting looks easy, and if you want to put out a crap thing, I guess it is, but if you care about what you do and you want to have a good product, it takes a lot of work.
Sure does, yeah.
And I was listening to your podcast recently, and I mean,
really?
I mean, it's not just you. You bring people on and talk about the Tigers.
Yeah.
And you guys really know your stuff. How do you find people to come on? How do you know people? Is it through the website, through Twitter? Is that how you meet other English speakers who are Tigers fans to come on and talk about the team?
That's pretty much exactly it. The interesting thing about the guests on my show is that I've only had one guest or one co-host or whatever who lives in the Kansai area.
Mm.
All the rest of my co-hosts have been either in other parts of Japan or they're back stateside. And so I've met them through Twitter or through Facebook or whatever. Yeah. And I started my podcast exactly a year ago. And I really didn't know what I was doing, but it was just kind of something I started, not so much on a whim, but I thought, there's got to be a better way to put out some good content about the team in a different format that other people can latch onto, that maybe, they prefer over reading or whatever, something they can do on the fly or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I've just been learning on the fly too, and I still don't think that I've got a great product, and I can certainly learn a lot from someone like you, but. It's just been a lot of fun just talking to different people and learning their angle on the Tigers, but then also just learning about who they are as people and who they are, what they're doing in the world as well.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I've done is I've tried to pull in fans from other teams to get the perspective of other teams within my own show. And so I get that every now and then as well.
Very cool. Very cool. So a year in, how many episodes do you have up with your podcast?
Last week was episode 39, and so the big 4-0 is coming this coming weekend.
Good, man. That's pretty good in a year. That's a lot of episodes. It's difficult to keep those, regular.
Yes. Absolutely.
Do you have like a kind of a set release date, or do they just kind of come out every couple of weeks, or when some kind of like big event happens? Do you have some kind of schedule?
Right, so during the season, the baseball week kind of has a very natural rhythm.
And by the way, what is the season in Japan? I'm curious.
It's pretty much the same as America. It starts about a week or so earlier. Like it starts around March 24th, 25th.
Okay.
And typically the regular season ends in the first week of October.
Oh, okay.
So, and they actually go about 143 games, so it's about 20 fewer than MLB.
But I mean, when you only have 12 teams, wow. That's that's cool. They're playing a lot.
Well, so they actually they're in two separate leagues, and so it's actually 6 and 6, and so you're actually only playing 5 other teams most of the season.
Wow. Okay.
And then they have a short interleague schedule. So I mean, it really is a lot of. I don't want to say repetition because that sounds really negative. It's actually more like rivalry building.
Mm.
You really get to know the other team's pitchers, but then at the same time, I mean, it's just that challenge both as a pitcher and a hitter. Like, okay, I've faced this team, just for example, you might throw against the same team 5, 6, 7 times in one season, which is unheard of in major leagues, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you got to find different ways to trick the same batters. And as a hitter, you got to find, you got to keep up with the pitcher. And so it's this real chess game between them. And so it's a lot of fun anyways, even though it is a lot of seeing the same teams.
Mm.
Yeah. So anyways, the rhythm of the baseball week is Tuesday to Sunday.
Okay.
So it's a 6 game week, and Mondays are always off. And so I tend to do my podcast recording on Sunday nights after the action, and then I do my editing on Monday during the day, and by Monday evening I try to have it out.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's during the season. Then off season, last off season I kind of did stuff pretty randomly, and this off season I'm probably going to take it completely off.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm aiming to reach 50, and then actually we have a second child on the way, and so I kind of feel like that's going to throw a wrench in a lot of things. And so
I think so, yes.
Yeah, so I figure instead of trying to push things and keep going hard in the off season, I think I'm just going to take some paternity leave.
Well, for those of you guys out there who are following me on social media, you'll know that I'm actually going to be running my first marathon in more than 3 years this fall.
Yeah, congratulations.
Just started training for the Kobe Marathon. I was from 2008 until 2013. I ran 12 full marathons, and then baby number 2 came, and it was just kind of like, it was a matter of marathon running is a very selfish hobby. It's all about you being alone, away from your family, running, and when you have a 2-year-old and a 0-year-old in your house, and you're saying to your wife, all right, and in my case, I work 6 days a week normally. I'm like, all right, my one day off, I'm going for a long run. I'll see you back in 4 hours, 5 hours. My one day off, it was made clear, and I agree that was maybe not the best time for me to be a runner. So I took a few years off, and now that my kids are 6 and 3, time to get back into the game.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I mean that time away is definitely it's gonna add a bit of rust or a little bit of few rolls or whatever.
Oh
right?
gosh, well I've got rust and rolls actually. Got some rolls around the midriff.
Yeah.
Kind of dinner rolls. I don't know what you call it, but definitely I'm not as, how shall I say, not as svelte as I once was. But I'm looking forward to getting out there. And my goal for this marathon, it's not like, when I was more serious into it, it was all about like times and stuff. Just like I haven't run in 3 years. Let's just get this thing done. It's a matter of finishing it. And now I'm a Kobe PR ambassador. So I'm a volunteer with the city of Kobe, Japan. Promoting tourism in the city with my social media. So I'm going to be covering it as a PR ambassador. So I'm going to be probably have just a whole bunch of cameras and stuff with me too. I'll have a GoPro, my iPhone, I'm taking pictures.
That's pretty wild.
It's going to be a good time.
Are you going to have a sash as well that shows that you're the Kobe PR ambassador?
I think I'm going to have I'm going to probably have a t-shirt.
Okay.
A running shirt. Better than a sash.
Nice. Not the Just Japan podcast t-shirt though.
Well,
that could be the change of wardrobe partway through or something.
Yeah, true. I have to get a Just Japan podcast running t-shirt. No, I think they have a lot of there's rules about having certain advertising and logos and stuff. We'll see though. Yeah, I'll write the placard.
You'll probably find some Tigers fans running as well.
Oh yes, I've seen them in the past.
Yeah,
I've definitely seen them in the past. I've seen some psychos, man. I've seen guys wearing Hanshin Tigers uniforms with the giant big pants, wearing wooden traditional Geita sandals.
Oh my goodness!
Running the full marathon.
It's hardcore.
Yeah, that's even beyond. That's just psycho. And I don't mean Japanese psycho cool. I mean that's just you're insane. But respectable. Okay, it's a late in the evening, good sir. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I'm curious, how can people find all of your stuff online?
Okay, well, I think probably the easiest way is just to Google Hanshin Tigers English News. That's what I go by on Facebook. That's what I go by with it's kind of my sub name for my website. And then also on Twitter, I am at the Hanshin Tiger. So I've got Twitter at the Hanshin Tiger. I've got my Facebook page, which is Hanshin Tigers English News. I've also got kind of a side group called Hanshin Tigers Game Day, which is actually a group. So we've got a community of almost 400 people that during games, it's kind of like a live chat during the game. So people get all excited or get all mad or whatever as the game is going on. So it's a pretty fun place to hang out if you want to just kind of make some connections within the Hanshin Tigers world.
Cool.
But then the big one is the website, which is www.thehanshintigers.com.
Right, and make sure you get the in there. You need
That's right.
that.
Yeah.
The Hanshin Tigers. And of course, all these links will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. All the links will be there. So when you click on this episode, everything that has just been mentioned will be there for you guys to
Excellent.
click on and enjoy and like and subscribe to and all of that stuff. Is your podcast, can people find that on iTunes?
That's on iTunes. Yeah, I actually don't have it up in any other places other than iTunes, unfortunately.
And how can they find it on iTunes?
I think just kind of the same thing. Actually, if you type in Hanshin Tigers, it'll probably show up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Nice. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for joining us this evening on the podcast.
Man, I totally appreciate it. I was really excited to join in. I've been listening to you for a good chunk of time now, so it'll be weird to hear my own voice on the podcast, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and all of you guys out there listening, go check out the Hanshin Tigers podcast. Go check out the hanshintigers.com. All those links are in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. And again, one more time, Trevor, thank you so much.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks, Kevin.
The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is... Please note, the new number is...
All right, I want to thank Trevor for coming on the Just Japan podcast, episode number 117, and telling us all about his incredible endeavor, his incredible project, thehanshintigers.com. Go check it out. Bookmark that site. If you're coming to Japan, you want to see baseball, go check it out. If you're in Japan and you're interested in the Hanshin Tigers and you didn't know they had such an incredible English resource, well, boom, there it is. If you're Japanese and you're wanting to practice your English and improve, go check out thehanshintigers.com. What a fun way to listen to English, to read English, to get involved, by following your team. So again, thank you so much, Trevor. All of you guys, go over, check that out. Check out his podcast. Check out his site. Links are in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. So moving on, guys. I'm just gonna try to keep this flowing along. Not so many breaks and bumps and jumps and cuts and all of that stuff. So, of course, you can find the Just Japan podcast on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher Internet Radio, on Libsyn, on Google Play. We're all over the place, and all of those links will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. And don't forget that justjapanstuff.com is not just the home of the Just Japan podcast, but it's also a blog. There's a lot of posts up there where you can find some really good information about Japan. Definitely check it out. All right, guys. And of course, you can find me on social media on Twitter at jlandkev. You can find the Just Japan podcast Facebook page. Go there, like it. An amazing community. Links in the show notes. Go find me on Instagram for awesome pictures of Japan at instagram.com/jlandkev, or just do a search for me at jlandkev, Japanlandkev. Of course, I'm on YouTube. Originally, I started everything as a YouTuber, a Japan YouTuber. I was a Korea YouTuber, then a Canadian YouTuber, Canada YouTuber, and then I moved to Japan. So I've been on YouTube for almost 10 years now. In October. And my channels are busankevin and jlandkev. Links are in the show notes, of course. And go check out my Facebook page, Kansai no Tori, the Birds of Kansai. The Birds of Kansai. Nature photography is one of my hobbies. Lots of great pictures of insects, of flora, fauna, flowers, birds, coolness, and information about them in Japan. That link will be in the show notes. Go check it out. And, of course, you can always support the Just Japan podcast over on Patreon. Patreon.com/Just Japan podcast. It's amazing people like you that support the show, and we're trying to get more support to make this show better. You may have noticed in the last few months I've been upping my game. Instead of being willy-nilly and the episodes only coming out a couple of times a month, I've been doing this every week for the last few months. Doing my best to make this show better and better for you guys, because you guys are awesome. So you can show your awesomeness by supporting the podcast over on Patreon. Those links will be in the show notes. Again, go to patreon.com/Just Japan podcast. Hey, bonus episodes could be flying your way very soon. Yeah, so that's it, guys. That is it for another week of the Just Japan podcast. And of course, you can also contact us. You can send us an email. Very simple. At justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. Justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. And that does it for this week's episode of the Just Japan podcast. I say that, but we're actually going to be back in just a few days with another episode about Pokemon Go. Hey, you guys rock. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Just Japan podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to download it, to share it with your friends, your family. Thank you so much for sharing the Just Japan podcast on your social media, on your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Snapchat, wherever it may be, your Line. Cheers, guys, gals. I appreciate it. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you are happy. I hope you're healthy. And I'll be talking to you real soon. What?